Hey gang, Kevin here, Life 22, and it is a beautiful Thursday morning. Welcome to the great city of Olean, New York. Um, so I had a litany of topics I wanted to talk about, but I'm still doing some research on some. So before I come to you with incomplete information, we are holding off on those. But because we do a morning podcast, you guys, I get to hear this beautiful bouquet of my voice every morning from wherever you like to listen to podcasts, whether that be Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Apple Podcast. I'm trying to think. I think it's also translated in Arabic on Abagami. Anyways, as you can tell, and then obviously the most classic is YouTube by finding the link either through our Facebook, our Instagram, our X handle, and even I believe Blue Sky. Uh, anyways, but it is a phenomenal morning. I was hunting for something to talk to you guys about today, and I was thinking about something that I learned earlier in the week. Um, or I heard another podcaster talk about this, that you can't teach hunger, right? So people that go to work and they don't, give it their all, um, which is which has always been kind of like, I don't know if it's been my philosophy, but it's always been my mode of acting, right? So like when I have a job, when I do my small business, when I do this podcast, um, I have a tendency to um, be very hungry. Like I'll do above and beyond what I'm asked to do. I'll make it the best job that I can. Um, and obviously like I can, right? So like, like a person can't give you more than their ability to do a job because, it's outside of their capabilities, right? So, but I've always been one to learn and expand my knowledge base so that I can do a better job, whether it's now or in the future or both. And so that's always been, just how I've kind of lived my life. And when I heard this podcaster talking about, like federal layoffs and uh, a bunch of other different things, it's like, man, it's like, oh no, you know what it was? Somebody wrote into his show and was talking about like looking for advice on like, oh, what was it? Oh, it was like, I'm fresh out of high school. I work real hard. I'm planning on going to college. My boyfriend, my high school sweetheart, likes to just play video games all day and doesn't want to get a job and lives with his parents. And I'm ready to move out on my own. And his advice was just leave him. Like that's, you can't teach hunger. You can't teach hungry. And I thought that was phenomenal advice because most people will get stuck in those ruts. It's like, well, I married my high school sweetheart, and then they're miserable in 20 years because that person's never changed and they've never gotten the kick in the ass to change. And so I guess this morning we're starting with the moral fabric of our society again. Conversation, but it's one of those like, what do you do? What do you tell people? Like you should have that kick in your ass. You should have that. My girlfriend just broke up with me because I'm lazy and I just play video games all day. And I don't want to get a job and I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And then maybe that sparks them to do something, but you can't truly teach hungry. Like I guess well there's no method. You can't send somebody to school to learn hungry, right? Like I guess they have to kind of learn it on their own if they're going to learn it at all, or it should be something that's naturally ingrained in you. Um, which gets me to the next point. Like I'm blessed to have the people that work for me both in my private sector and well, um, that I surround myself with, I would say. So like people that work for me in the private sector, people that I spend time with that I consider close friends, people that I deal with on a daily basis, those people are typically hungry. I want to say um, it might be familial too. I know a lot of my family members are typically hungry, right? They go out, they do the best job they can, they strive for the best and greatness, things like that. Well, so um, yeah, it's just something to get your to wrap your head around. So like when you're hearing about people not keeping their job, losing their job, having to survive and feed their family and like it is what it is. And I'm kind of reading some articles here. So well, here's an editorial to the Only in Star, which kind of caught my interest this morning. Um, I got to reach out to them. They need to better form their website needs a little bit of work. some of their sports stuff is popping up in the news stuff. Some of the news stuff is popping up in the sports stuff. So a little critique there from them, but it has to do with, like, let's see here, the Joe Sempolinski town hall meeting. Somebody wrote an editorial in saying, well, the paper wrote this and the tap wrote this, and it's not exactly like that. And the woman goes into detail about how the crowd didn't want Medicaid being cut. Let's start with that one, I guess. So here's the issue with cutting Medicaid or Medicare or any of these third rail political issues, right? Raising taxes, things like that. Well, the issue is nobody wants their taxes raised, right? But then but everybody wants everything from the government, and that is a mentality that is not a hungry mentality. That is the antithesis of the hungry man's mentality. I don't want things from the government. I want my government to do very little. I want my government to, that I'm a small government guy, and I think most Americans should be. And the reason that most Americans aren't is because of this, like, it's ingrained in them in an early age that, like, they should feel differently. They should feel that the government should do everything. And there's been a mentality in the United States for many decades and then it's been being almost like kind of not taught in schools, but the mentality is wrapping around them with the fact that the school is, the Department of Education is a government-run entity. So, well, if the government wasn't providing stuff, you would not be educated. It's like, well, yes, but I'm sure we'll find our education somewhere else. But nobody ever poses the anti-argument to the government should cover everything for you. And it's one of those mentalities. It's like the government shouldn't. The government should provide me with like collective protections, if you will, right? So these collective protections include, like, I don't want crackheads to break into my house, kill my wife and my family, steal my stuff, and then, like, have no form of justice to bring them to, right? So if a crackhead breaks in my house, I want the police to come. I want the police to come and shoot them if they arrive on time, and for attempting to murder me. I want, just so they can go sell my stuff to get my fix, and they don't care about human life, right? So, like, people like that, like, I'm a big capital punishment guy. Like, if you're gonna break into someone's house and kill them, like, guess what? Your life is worth what you think their life is worth. If you think somebody else's life is worth nothing, then your life should be worth nothing. So, where the rest of us, we appreciate the value of human life, and we're not out going killing people. And because we don't do that, we have value in human life, and at which point our lives should be respected as valuable. That's pretty much it. It's an easy concept, right? But anyways, I want the cops to prevent people from breaking into my house, stealing my stuff, killing me and my family. Most importantly, I want level roads. I want level roads for commerce. I want pothole-free level roads for commerce. I understand that you can never have all roads 100% pot-free at any one time, and I will take the give and take. Like, everybody's blowing up right now about the 86 having horrible potholes. Well, you can't fix them right now. You're going to fix them, and a week later they're going to pop out. And the state's only going to come once. So if you want to call them right now, they will come and cold patch your potholes, and they will pop out in 3 months, and you can see them next year after this time, because they're only going to come once a year. Like, they're like Santa Claus in how that they operate at the state level, and they have a lot of places to hit. So I understand why they only come once a year. So I would say, hey, listen, I want to be on your radar. So this spring, the problem is the state doesn't listen to your demands in terms of, like, your timing. So, like, if you say, I want you here now, or I want you here in 3 months, as soon as you start complaining, they may come. As soon as you start complaining, they may come 6 months later. You would hope they come 6 months later so they can actually patch the potholes when it's going to last for 1 to 3 years. But you're not gonna get, they could come tomorrow, and then they're gonna pop them, and they're gonna last for 3 months, and then they're not gonna come back for at least a year, at least a year. So that's the one downside to a lot of these different topics when you're talking about potholes, for example. But the idea is, I want police to protect me, to provide me with some protections, to safeguard me from other people infringing on my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want very basic need on that, right? Like, the egregious ones. If my neighbor like estoppels my freedom of speech or my right to religion or to hang a sign up in front of my house, like I don't want the cops to go over and shoot them, right? Like I don't need any jurisdiction on that. The same way freedom the First Amendment gives you freedom of expression. I don't care what color my neighbor paints his house. That's covered under his First Amendment. He wants to paint his house purple. That is his choice. I am a big anti-zoning, um, uh, but what's the other one? HOA, all that stuff. Like, oh, your only houses can be yellow or blue in this neighborhood. Like, no, go screw yourself. Like, nobody only likes yellow or blue. But it's their house. It's their property. It's their constitutional right. It's their inalienable rights given to them by God to own their property, do whatever the hell they want with it. So, I mean, within reason. And within reason is a very strict category. Not like, well, within reason, it doesn't look good. Like, no, it doesn't. No. And that'll get us into tomorrow's topic, which is going to be code issues with tiny homes and things that aren't tiny homes, but they still qualify under safety. But, that said, I want my government to provide me with those basic protections to just prevent people from doing the most egregious infringements on my rights. And then, if somebody does infringe on my rights, like, take my life or my life of my loved ones, I would like at least the cops to show up, examine the bodies, find out who did it, and serve justice on swift wings. So those are the the two main things, and then it's okay. We can get down a rabbit hole, and the one other rabbit hole I would say is like, we come together for a communal good, right? Like, so in addition to the communal good would be like paved roads, right? And the next one is also like a public safety thing, which similar to what the police do and similar to the collective value of putting roads together. If a building catches on fire, I would like to have some sort of organization that will put the fire out, whether that's the paid fire department in your city, whether that's a volunteer and you collect money from me for taxes to pay for their equipment, what have you. I grew up in a small town in Connecticut. We had a volunteer fire department. Those guys did phenomenal. Every single one of them worked full-time jobs. They were very passionate about it, and they had a great knockdown rate. The city of Olean, I have no qualms with those guys. Those guys take a lot of trainings. It is their full-time job. So they're probably more trained than those volunteers are because that's all they do all day. They're not like out working as a carpenter and then getting a beep, 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 and then they got to run and go to a fire call. And so like on nights and weekends, they're taking continuing education and continuing training. But those are like the three main things that I want my government to come together to do. That's it. I don't need them to like, well, here's a slight injustice from one person's perspective, and then the government needs to get involved. Because the more the government gets involved, the more, and we went over this yesterday, the more the government gets involved, the more they break things. The government likes to get involved. It's a horrible thing. Because what happens is the government gets involved in something, and it's like taking aspirin. Or taking some drug, right? Oh, it's going to solve this problem you're having, but it's going to give you 3 more. And so what you can do is we can let the government handle those 3 more problems that they just caused, which usually going to the cause of the issue for asking the cause for the solution versus curbing the cause. So you can either deal with those 3 things caused by the one issue you want to handle, or you can have the government go and fix it. But every time the government does it, it creates 3 more problems. So now all of a sudden it's this Hydra effect, and you're never going to solve that because the government by design is inefficient. The government by design is a problem causing method. It's like, hey, you want to solve one major problem. We can do that. We're going to cause 3 small problems. And then in order to solve 3 small problems, we're going to and everything is inefficient. So we solve this big problem at a 20% efficiency, right? Or 25%. And at a good day, 50%, good day, right? And then you're going to go down the line. In every one of those little problems, you'll have a little solution that'll kind of solve the problem, and it costs you a ton of money because it's only 25% efficient. And then it causes 3 more problems amongst each one of them. So now all of a sudden you have this snowball. I want the government to do everything. It's like, okay, well then everything is going to have problems. Everything is going to be very inefficient. Everything is going to cost lots of money, and everybody is going to have So many problems, you're going to feel like you are going through chemotherapy because you're just like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. What is happening to me? So, but those are the things I want my government to do. Um, I was raised in a society that has a small form of socialism in it, right? These social programs that were put in place. So like Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, things like that. Things that are designed to be temporary and pick people up by the bootstrap. Medicare, not so much. Um, so Medicare is people's. During the Great Depression, they were like, "Oh my God!" Or shortly thereafter, they were like, "Oh my God, we need to." Um, well, during that time period, they were like, "Well, people can't save for their retirement. We have to. The government has to save for them." And the problem is, we're asking the government to do something efficiently, and the government's not efficient at anything. They're very inefficient, both from a monetary standpoint and how they enact things. So governments are very inefficient. So if you want efficiency, how about you teach people how to be sufficient, self-sufficient? As Theodore Roosevelt once said, the rugged individualist should be able to handle a lot of things. And that's where that hunger comes back in. If you are hungry, you don't need the government to save for your future. Or if you taught people how to save for their future, well, if you take the same amount of money you would have put into Medicare, then and there's a great PragerU video on that. I will look it up and include it in the description below on the YouTube or on the Transistor description. It is phenomenal, and it's a 5-minute video, and it just explains to you how you invest your money and how by the time you retire, you don't have to worry about increases in your monthly payments because you have well more than the government ever gave you, and it's not the government's to manage; it's yours. The issue is that people won't do it. Well, if people won't do it, if people are too stupid to take care of themselves, oh, I don't have the money, I don't want to, I want to spend it on this video game, I want to spend it on drugs, I want to spend it on cigarettes and booze. Well, guess what? That's your own damn fault. That's your own damn fault. You shouldn't put that on me. You shouldn't put that on me to take care of you because you did something stupid. So, like, oh, I didn't save for the future. Somebody has to come help me. Like, nobody has to come help you. It's like mind-boggling. There's no agency anymore. There is no self. There is no like. There's no self-responsibility. There's no responsibility for anybody. Like it's well, the government's going to take care of me. Like no, 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 no. The government has like I just named it. Those are the three things the government's really supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be collabing on those three things. And those things cost money, so they have to have a little tax division so they can come collect property taxes. But then for us to be like, well, collectively we want to save money for Ukraine. No. You want to save money for Ukraine? Start a GoFundMe. Give money to your local church that wants to, that's sending missions over to go help out in Ukraine. There's different funds. There's all this stuff. Private sector is great because private sector allows you for those communal, it makes me feel good to put my money here. Right now, you're making it so that I have to give money to taxes for your charity. That's the issue. Like if you want to put money into that charity, you put your money into that charity. Well, we wouldn't have enough for that charity. Well, that's not our problem. If it's something that you want to sponsor, then you better go drum up some more donations, not me. You're not going to forcibly take it out of my pocket, and then I become a criminal if I don't pay those taxes to go to your project. That's the ridiculous part. That's the part where you're using my government and weaponizing it against me for your little pet projects. That's the issue. That is a big issue, and that doesn't teach hunger. It doesn't teach hunger. It's another thing. Like you're not. It's not. It's not being hungry. That's you making the government do something that you should be doing. If it's a problem for you, it's your problem. If you want to do it, it's your problem. Like you can't make other people do it. By making other people do it, they're going to be sick and tired of it. They're going to be angry. There's going to be divisiveness. That's why the nation is split right now because there's all these people using the government as one way or another for ideology and views. And it's like, no, the government's supposed to be like nonpartisan and just right here. And it's supposed to handle these three minor things. And if you want to do something, then you go do it. You go do it. You start a non-for-profit for whatever little cause you have or whatever. The same with, so here's where it comes into Medicaid. So this woman's talking about Medicaid. And what about the cuts for Medicaid? And Sempolinski, um, his first, let's see here, he explained that our area shouldn't be reliant on Medicaid and food stamps. Like, you should not be reliant on it. You lose your job, and you're struggling to make ends meet while you find a new job, right? Let's say it was for non-just causes. Your boss, the company went under. It wasn't anything you did wrong. You weren't like caught stealing, and you know what I mean. Like you're an okay regular dude. You lost your job. You got to pay for your family, whatever, and you're on unemployment for like a couple weeks while you're trying to find a new job, and because you don't have the same income source, and you don't have the insurance from your previous employer, you go on Medicaid and you go on food stamps, and you're on it for like 6 months most, right? As you find a new job, and you get on it, and then you get off of it. You're on it, and then you find a new job, and you get your new employer's insurance if they have it, or you're insured. And that's where the other issue is, like, everyone's like, oh, your employer has to include insurance. Like, no, they don't. They shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to. And we'll get into a medical insurance thing later date, because I could go on for 2 hours on medical insurance. The issue with the employer is that, like, you can't you shouldn't have to force them to do anything. If they're going to pay you more money, they don't include your insurance. If they pay you less money but they're employing you, with and giving you a decent wage, but they've subtracted what other employers are paying because they're giving you insurance or better insurance or whatever. And then that's part of the happy medium. People can't just sit there and be like, well, my wage has to be this and I have to have free insurance. Like, okay, well, you being greedy, your greed has nothing to do with what the fair and economic capitalistic process is here. Like, that's it. Like, if this is what things are going for, that's what they're going for. Like, you just have to eat it. Sorry. But anyways, in the meantime, our area is reliant on it. Majority of the people in this area are on those, and it's like, okay, so either you're, like, well, people don't make enough. Well, like, whose fault is that? Like, because I have a lot. I have tenants. I have friends with tenants. I have. There are people I know that they just. Well, I can't go to work because of this, and so now they're like, this temporary assistance is permanent. And it's like, listen, you've got restless leg syndrome. And you'd be surprised. Like, I can, if there wasn't like this, it's not HIPAA, but I was going to say, it's like this thing inside of me. Like, I could drive to their house right now and on like camera and show you like this person, that person, this person. I can come up with 4, like right on the top of my head, that have restless leg syndrome, and they can't go to work. They get a government check. They're always fighting to, get a government disability check, which is also subsidized by Medicare or Medicaid. And then it's also subsidized. They also get a subsidy from food stamps. Sometimes they get housing assistance. And it's one of those things. It's like, that's not just like 4% of our population. Like, this woman is right. Our area is reliant on it. Like, there's a lot of families. The problem is, going back to our hunger issue. Like, if you had to survive, like, that's the issue, is like, we as a society, we become civilized enough where we're like, hey, this guy needs a leg up. We'll have a big pool of money where this guy can tap into if he loses his job. Once every 10 years, somebody loses their job, and they just need like a leg up for a month or 6. And like, that's it. Like, after that, like, you're done. And I think that a lot of people don't seem to get how many people live on this stuff, live on it. It is one of the biggest, social programs are one of the biggest expenditures, both at the federal and state level. Biggest programs. It's sickening. It's sickening because it's all these people that are now satiated by it. So they were already kind of not hungry to begin with. And now all of a sudden we've fed them. We're overfeeding them. Now they're becoming fat on their inability to be hungry. They're not going to be hungry for a very long time. You pull it off of you. The only way you're going to try to attempt to teach hunger here is you pull the program. Because humans are resilient. And most people don't seem to get this. Humans are more resilient than cockroaches. Like, nuclear bombs could go off and people will survive. You take all their free food away, people will figure out how to eat. How many people are going to starve to death because you took food stamps away? Just eliminate it across the country. One family? One family? You know how many families lose their business, their life savings, everything, and like they don't qualify for this because they once had certain programs or whatever. Like there's like people that will just like you just ruined like their entire like they were trying to they were making their way in the world, and all these taxes that just keep going up and up and up, and you're destroying their livelihood and their American dream because you're constantly taxing, especially the small business owners. You're taxing, and in New York State you're taxing and taxing and taxing and taxing the small business owners, and just so you can help satiate these people that don't want to work, that are coming up with an excuse to be lazy. Laziness is contagious, and hunger is a hard thing to teach. And that's the issue. That's a huge issue. You have all these people that just they don't want to work, and you're like, now all of a sudden you're bankrupting small businesses to try to satisfy these people that don't want to work, to have to put more money into that pool for those people that are temporarily on it. And that's the downside. And then you if you just eliminated food stamps, you might have one family starve to death. And I don't even think you'd have that. You know why? Because what you would see is you would see a spike in people coming together as a community. There's a lot of people that are secular nowadays, but you'll see people come together and even just pool their money. But back in the day, I say back in the day, like 1950s, 1960s, prior to that, you always had churches and communities doing food pantries, loaves and fishes. You had all of this Christian charity. You have all these things that are in place to do this. It's no place for the government. The government shouldn't have done it. So if somebody is going to starve to death, they can go down to the local church, and I'm sure they'll find it. I'm sure that and so when I say maybe one family, maybe that's like they were driving and they got hit by another car, right? Like, and they died on their way to go get food. So yes, if you did the autopsy, it'd be like a COVID thing, right? Like, oh, they're starving. Well, they starved to death. Like, no, he had a migraine because he hadn't eaten in like 4 hours. Like, we have third world countries on this planet that like they haven't eaten in weeks, and they might not eat it again for 2 more weeks if they, you know what I mean? From today, like it's mind blowing. Like, oh, people are gonna starve to death because they haven't had 5 meals today. Like, bro, really? This is what we're talking about? Like, so my biggest concern is like Joe Sempolinski's right here. Like, oh, his response was, "Oh, we shouldn't be relying on it." Like, screw you. The government has to take care of everything. Like, your disdain for him to think that people should be on food stamps and Medicaid and all that other stuff. No, the government is not supposed to take care of you. That is the rule. Like if we let's have a rule. Let's have a word that takes for something that like takes care of like 3 basic things that people need, and nothing else, and should never be expanded. What would the founding fathers call it? The government. The government. It's almost like that's the definition of the word. Like, I'm sorry that the founding fathers, when they were like writing to Sir Webster, when they were like, we're having this thing called the government, and we're gonna only cover police and some community things like, fire. We'll take some of our tax dollars and buy a fire wagon at the time, right? Like a horse-drawn fire wagon, and we're gonna fix some of the roads, but we're gonna do it at local levels only, and have a little bit of federal money so that we can maintain the courthouse where we all meet, once every 4th of July to modify some documents here and there, and yeah. So I'm sorry, in there they said like, we will not cover food stamps, we will not be your religion, anyway, sorry, that irks me. And then, so let's see here, the deficit, the crowd quickly responded, the cutting national debt, taxing the rich. I'm going to kind of button that. So like I said, I didn't have a lot to talk about, but I guess as soon as I start talking, it happens. They quip back at like, well, you want to cut federal spending? Then you need to get more taxes. Like, what? Your article is not making sense to me. Like, well, they need to cut your first response should be taxing billionaires. And the crowd roared. Like, the crowd roared. This is like an article I saw or a post on Facebook the other day I saw from the Olean Star that said dozens of people showed up to protest Nick Langworthy's office for his support of Trump and Doge, and it's like there's like 10 to 11 people out front. It's not even a dozen. So dozens, like plural. It was like it's it was it's one of those things, and it's like I don't know. But their response is like you should to fix the government, you need to tax the billionaires. It's so I pulled this up. So and this is something that is like that nobody wants to ever talk about. And then you talk about it and people are like, "Oh, it's not real." Really? So um do you know how games like Monopoly work? Like it's a zero sum game. Like the longer you play the game, eventually you just have one winner. And the issue is with our economy, in capitalism, is that you don't live long enough to ever have the game of Monopoly. Like just like when you're playing Monopoly and you're just tired of playing, you're just like I just like, or you're playing hands of poker one after another, and you're just like I just want to be done, and you have like both sides just making bad decisions just so they can get out. That's that's kind of human beings in that like sometimes you play the game, and that's always our game. Like you're never gonna have it where somebody is just like has all the money, right? Because that person will either be A, dead, because the life expectancy of them, them having all the money and nobody else having any money would be there'd be a series of circumstances that would make that impossible. But then even if that was plausible over statistically, the life expectancy of the average human being could never achieve that, right? So it'd have to be like familial wealth, right? So the wealth of your family. But even then, there are different things, different modalities, different like mentalities that come from first generation, second generation business owners, investors, whatever. Um, so you usually don't ever really have that. So like the first topic was always inequality and how there's an inequality of wealth. Yes, in that people keep using this term inequality like it's a bad thing. Like inequality just means things aren't equal, right? Like equal doesn't always have to be a good thing. Like there's an inequality between criminals and law enforcement. Like yeah, there's a lot more criminals out there than that's a bad thing. But then if you switched it and it was like, well, there's to bad guys, right? You would be like, well, that's still not a good thing. And it's like, well, what if there was like, more good guys than bad guys, right? Like, well, that's better, So like inequality is just a term. It just means that things aren't equal. So and it's true that there is an inequality of wealth at the top. You wouldn't have rich people if there was equality. Equality means that everybody has the same amount of money. And then if money's not moving, the economy falls apart. So you can't have equality because absolute equality means that everybody has the same exact money at every moment of the day. And so like money's never changing hands. And then it's like, well, then just get rid of money. Get rid of money, but then you're also going to have no incentive program either to make people do things. Like you have to have incentives. There's always incentives. Biologically, people have incentives built into them. Um, but yeah, so I mean, it talks about. Let's see here. Low earners might pay 10 to 15% of income taxes. 10 to 15% of income taxes. So that's their tax percentage rate. Middle earners. So it's talking about our progressive tax system. So if you're making a minimal threshold, you're going to pay 20 to 25%. If you're in the top 1%, you're paying 35 to 40% of your stuff, your money into the government. So the math and how the 1% pay the majority is if your population this is a hypothetical situation. So if you have a million people, the population of a million, and total tax revenue is $2 trillion. The top 1%, so 1 million people, earn 1.5 trillion. So they're earning majority of the money. And that's because of good decisions and investments and education. So if you had a better education system, you'd have more people that are educated. You wouldn't have New York State at 72% literacy rate, which is phenomenally low. We should have like a 95% literacy rate. Like it's not unachievable. They pay 37% tax at that, which is $555 billion. The bottom 99% would earn, I think the math, let's see here. They're 1.5. Okay. Oh, tax revenue is $2 trillion. Okay. Anyways, sorry. All right. There's just so much jargon in here. I thought I had it consolidated so that I could give it to you, present it to you nicely. But all right, so the top 1% per the IRS in 2021, sorry. The top 1% pays 42.3% of the federal taxes. The top 10% pays 74.3%. The bottom 50% pay just 2.3%. And then that's often offset by earned income taxes. So, out of all the people making money in the United States, the people that are making 50%, like 50% of America, the bottom 50%, are paying 2.3%. And so and then there's a gap in between, right? So which is 10 point so 100% minus 2.3, you have 97.7% is generated by everybody making 50%, the higher 50% mark of money, bringing it in. So the top 10% is 74.3%, and 42.3% of that is the top 1%. So if we subtract 42.3, 42.3 from that 97.7. Taking the 1% out, the part between 50 and up to 99 is 55% of the taxes. Okay? So 32. So there's 32% in that last 9%. So to bring it to the margin between 50 and 90, so minus 32% is 23%. 23 and a quarter. And then everybody below that is 2.3. So when you have people in Olean, majority of which are in the lower 50%, they pay 2.3. And then it's also offset. So whatever they pay in is really offset by earned income taxes. So that's not like it's 2.3% already offset. No, it's 2.3%, then it gets offset again. So they're paying even less than that. Because they're taking other tax money to give the money back in earned income credits and things like that. So we're already at a 2.3% income ratio for our average household in New York. And the argument to these people is, well, they should have Medicaid. And in order to pay for Medicaid, instead of doing these government cuts, you need to tax billionaires more. It's like they're already paying 42%. Like they could just go to another country. They don't have to come. They don't have to be here. They could just make all their money in other countries where they're not being taxed, or whatever to that degree. Like they can just go somewhere else, or they can shut down their business. If they're not, they could just take their riches and just, I've already been paying tax on it. You can't charge me tax year after year on it. So I'm just going to live off of this until I die. And now all of a sudden you just watch all the top percenters just drop right off. And now guess what? Now the poor have to pay more. Or either that or the poor will start attacking, the people in the 80th percentile, because they'll actually be the new 1%ers. And then those people will be like, I can barely make ends meet. And they'll do the same thing and the economy collapses. So yeah, let's keep taxing the rich. The rich are already being taxed above. Well, they get tax breaks. And after their tax breaks, they're still paying 42.3%. That's them just trying to cling on to a 0.5%. It's their money. They earned it. They work. They made the decisions necessary to get where they are. And everybody pretends like, oh, well, you're born poor, you stay poor. It's like, no, you're born poor, and by the time you die, most people die with like in a well above the poverty line. So even if you were born at the lowest of lows in the poverty line, and you work your way up and you earn money, you still end up like there's based on age. There people, and like not everybody is just this little old lady who can't afford to fix her roof and lives in some little town like city like Olean, and it's just I don't know. I could go down a rabbit hole for days on this stuff, but we're already 40 minutes into this podcast, and I'm sure most of you are satisfied with the lovely stylings of Kevin for the morning. So with that said, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, download us, check us out on any form of podcast medium that you like to download your podcasts, and we will see you guys tomorrow on Life 22.